Buenos dias und herzlich willkommen bei Gate 7, deinem Podcast über Fernweh und Fotografie. In dieser Show geht es um Menschen, für die Reisen mehr ist als Spaß und Erholung. Freue dich auf praktische Tipps und Tricks, wie du tief in fremde Kulturen eintauchst und lerne, deine Abenteuer in bewegenden Bildern festzuhalten, egal mit welcher Kamera. Bist du bereit? Dann los, lass uns abheben mit deinem Gastgeber, Kai Beermann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gate 7 podcast. My guest today is street photographer Dmitry Stepanenko, originally from the Ukraine. He's currently based in London and he's a member of the street photography collective called The Street Collective. I first came across his work when I interviewed him for my blog, The Art of Creative Photography, about 5 years ago, and now I'm very happy to follow up with him on my podcast. As to his photographic language and creative process, Dmitry says, "For me, the most important thing when I look at a photograph is the answer to the simple question whether it provides me with aesthetic pleasure. If the answer is yes, I do not care much about the rest. What can give me that sort of pleasure is a much more difficult question to answer. It can be anything, from the decisive moment to a nice arrangement of colors." In this interview, among other things, we talk about Dmitry's influences in street photography, how he developed his photographic vision, and why it's important to have mentors on the way to become a better photographer. We also talk about his recent book, Heavy Color, and discuss the editing process behind it. Another topic we touch on is the London Street Photography Festival, of which Dmitry is one of the organizers. The second edition will take place between the 3rd and 5th of August this year. It's a non-commercial event where emerging street photographers are giving a platform to show their work. There are also panel discussions, photo walks, photo critiques, and different kinds of workshops. It's free to attend. The link to the website can be found in the show notes of this episode. Please also head over to artofcreativephotography.com. I'll soon launch a podcast on that site, which will only be in English. You can subscribe to the newsletter and I'll let you know when the show kicks off. But now, thank you very much for listening, and let's dive into the interview with Dmitry Stepanenko. Hello, Dmitry. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Kai. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. And Dmitry, it's the second time that you get involved with one of my photography projects. It was, I think, in 2013 when you were so kind to answer some question or some interview questions for a feature on my photography blog, The Art of Creative Photography. And now we do some follow-up in this podcast.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Dmitry, can you please introduce yourself? Who are you? And how did you get started in street photography?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I'm a street photographer. I started doing photography in 2009, and it coincided with the time when I moved to UK. So originally I'm from Ukraine. I lived in Russia for some time before coming to UK as well. So I started in 2009, and then quite quickly I realized that I was mostly interested in the world around me and people surrounding me as well. So I quite after discovering the works of some of the masters of street and documentary photography quite early on when I started, it captivated me so much that now it's by far my biggest hobby. I think, as sometimes when people ask me what I do, I say I actually do photography, and my work is just, something that keeps me going rather than the other way around,
Okay.
So it's been going for a while now. Initially started with kind of classic black and white photography, as I was inspired by, all these masters such as, Cartier-Bresson, Elliot Erwitt, and so on and so forth. Gradually shifted to color in about 2012, 2013, after discovering the works of Alex Webb, Georgy Pinhasov, Ernst Haas, Sol Leiter, etc. So now predominantly, or almost exclusively, I can say I shoot in color. Yeah, so I guess that's it in short. What I'm doing.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction. And you mentioned color photography. That's one topic I'd like to touch on later on. And you've just recently published a book. It's called Heavy Color. So we'll definitely come back to that. Before that, I'd like to ask you. You said that photography doesn't pay your bills. It's your biggest hobby, but you still have another job. What do you do for a living?
I actually work in finance, in consulting, which is quite different from photography, obviously. So you get to be creative, in both ways, in finance as well as photography, but in a slightly different way. So it helps me to kind of support myself, but absolutely most of my time, my free time, I spend doing photography. So if you calculate the actual hours spent doing photography or thinking about photography or editing work, then probably I don't know which activity actually takes more of my time. If you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so a great part of your time goes to photography. Do you go out every day to shoot, or?
Not every day, especially not in winter time, because it gets dark very early here. But I go out definitely every weekend, and when on holidays as well. And summertime, I tend to go out more frequently when the day is longer, when I can catch some light. Light is a separate story in London and in UK in general.
Yeah.
95% of the time is quite dark and dull. So it's a challenge to find some good light and some, kind of strong colors. That's something that interests me. I think that was one of the things that actually pushed me a bit, to kind of challenge myself and try to find, these strong colors and expressive color, if you wish, in quite gray surroundings. So that was something that actually, pushed me to kind of try harder and look for something that's more unusual in this place. Because normally normally you wouldn't associate like photography from the UK with strong colors. Normally for colors, people go to, I don't know, India or South America, or these countries where there's a lot of color everywhere. So that was kind of a challenge that kind of helped me to develop my style, I guess, as well in the end.
Yes, if you look at your picture on your website, you definitely found your own style in color photography, and you've been very successful finding color in Britain.
Thank you. Trying to.
Great. And what does a normal day look like for you when you head out with your camera to shoot some street?
Sure. So I do walk a lot, like really a lot when I go out shooting. So I normally go in the morning and I come back home quite late in the evening after walking miles and miles. So I don't kind of stay in one place and wait. So I'm most of the time on the move. So I'm trying to to walk around to see what's happening. I might return to the same spot several times during the day, but I'm never kind of staying in the same place for more than 5 minutes. Probably because I'm very impatient. I don't know. But I walk very slowly. So if I'm with someone, normally 99.9% of the cases I'm on my own. I can't really shoot with other people. But if I'm with someone, it might be very annoying probably for them because as I said, I keep walking, but I walk very slowly, very, very slowly. So it's probably not the best rhythm for most of the normal people.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think street photography is something that's, well, at least in my case as well, better to be done alone. Everybody has, yeah, a different rhythm of moving and noticing things, and yeah, so it's if you're with someone and talking, you get distracted and you might miss some good shots.
Yeah, exactly. And just to elaborate a little bit more on that one, I mean, sometimes when I'm with someone I know, and even if I don't go out specifically shooting, when we walk together, and sometimes they can just suddenly stop and just look at something, which has, I don't know, a beautiful color, like nothing else. I wouldn't even take a photo, but I would just stand there, like suddenly stop and stand there and just enjoy the way it looks. And it might, I imagine it might look very strange, from to someone, looking at me at that moment, and I can't really explain even what I'm looking at. So for people, outside of photography or street photography, and more specifically, it might be quite an interesting scene potentially to observe.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, um, what is it usually that catches your attention? Are there certain things, or is it hard to put in words? What is it that makes you push the shutter button?
I guess it's a little bit difficult to kind of generalize. It's easier when you look at the pictures, I guess. I try to experiment. I try to not get stuck in one kind of thing. So I try to keep my mind open to different kind of situations that I experience. So I'm not really actively looking for some specific thing. I'm trying to be spontaneous as much as possible. Of course, all of us have something, on the back of our minds, even unconsciously, that kind of draws our attention to particular things. For me, it's probably mostly, play of light and colors, reflections. So I tend to focus a lot on the form. There is a big debate, as always, for it's going on for years. The content versus the form, and what's more important, what should be there. I mean, for me, it's not as simple as it should be like either one or another one, or the combination of the two, because I think that the form itself has its own meaning, so it brings content to a picture itself. Shapes and colors and light, they all influence the way we feel, the way we have some emotions when looking at the pictures. So they bring their own meaning. So in that sense, I think I can compare my approach or some of my photography to, so I would say, to some paintings, kind of abstract or semi-abstract paintings, potentially. Sometimes maybe abstract expressionism or something like that. That's quite close to me. So having said that, I always have a human element, so it's not completely abstract at the same time. So I like this element of unpredictability in my shots as well. So I guess it's a combination of two, but sometimes I'm always interested, as I said, in the human element, but quite often, if you look at some of my pictures, at least, you can see that I look at humans more. I wouldn't say not like objects, but like parts of the composition in many ways. So it doesn't really matter for me, who it is on the picture. If aesthetically this pleases me, right? So and again, it's not like a rule for me. I have different types of photographs that I make, but in quite many cases, I can say that what I'm looking for is some kind of an aesthetic pleasure. When you look at the photograph. So that's an important part of photography for me. So I'm not only looking for the action, but I'm trying to focus a lot on the aesthetics of photography.
Yeah, and you do that by color, by geometry, by forms, and these are all elements that add up to your characteristic aesthetics in your images.
Yeah, well, hopefully. It might be all in my imagination, it's difficult to judge, being too close to your own work.
No, but it really comes out. I really, really appreciate your images, and it's always a pleasure to look at them.
Thank you.
Dmitry, in the interview we did a couple of years ago, you said that I think street photography is more about experience and being alert, and of course luck plays a very important role, but you need to be well prepared not to waste your chance. So I think that's very fundamental when it comes to street photography. That's you have these two sides. On the one side, you are very you have to prepare yourself in a way not to miss a sudden action, but then the element of luck is always there and very hard to predict. How do you balance these two sides, and how do you bring them together?
Well, it's a good question. I still agree with what I said some time ago.
Yeah, sometimes you change opinions,
sometimes it's true. Yeah. Well, it's difficult to balance. I mean, the important thing is you need to be alert. You need to be kind of always ready, and that's something that is not that easy to maintain for long periods of time. Especially from my experience, you get tired quite quickly, if you always try to kind of concentrate. So sometimes you need to go with the flow a little bit as well to give some rest. And sometimes it leads to unpredictable results. But in many cases, you kind of try to, notice things, try to pay some extra attention to the surroundings. And that helps you to, well, if not create the chances, but at least not to miss as many of them as probably someone with less experience would do. So the more experience you get, and it's not only the experience that comes from photography or even visual arts. It can be anything really. I mean, obviously, photography is important. Looking at photography from some outstanding photographers of present and past, but also watching good movies, reading books, looking at some great paintings, listening to music. There are different things that can inspire you. So sometimes you need to be in this special kind of condition where you are focused, but at the same time you have some kind of creativity, inside of you. Then you start noticing some less obvious things, I would say, that kind of helps you to capture more things. Yeah, when you go out.
Yeah.
Does it answer your question? Sorry, I'm not sure. No.
Yeah, sure, of course. So it's basically you have to feed your creative soul by consuming different kinds of art. It can come from anything, from literature, paintings, as you mentioned, and then over the time with experience, you build up kind of a visual archive. And when you're walking the streets, you react to certain situations, but maybe unconsciously drawing from all that experience and that you've acquired beforehand.
Yeah, but one important point to add, I think, to that would be that yes, experience is very important, I think so. But it's also very, or equally important, is to stay curious and to constantly be surprised by things happening around you. And that's kind of the only way to keep improving, in my mind. So if you're not to stay fixated on some particular things that you do well, keep trying to find something new, some new harmonies, some new inspiration, and experiment. It's very important to kind of keep moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what is it about street photography that fascinates you? It's just well, is it the experience of being in the street, observing life around you, urban life, or is it more the final result afterwards, the picture, the image that you took, some yeah, interesting scene that you observed, and then later on you say, ah, well, look at this picture, I saw this.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, most of the time I'm out shooting, I'm quite upset with the results. So, 99.9% of the time you're quite frustrated that you can't get anything interesting. And then, but when you get something, you get this kind of, adrenaline rush, and you want to do more, and you get inspired again, and, that kind of keeps you going. So yes, I like shooting, but the result is obviously important. And sometimes it's difficult to say whether that's a particular picture is something that is going to stay with you, that you're going to be happy about it in a while, because I've been shooting for what 8 years now, and obviously some of the pictures that I liked some time ago, I don't find that interesting anymore. And quite rarely it happens that some of the pictures that were kind of 4 stars rather than 5 stars when you rate them, some of them might become actually more interesting with time. And as the time passes, you notice that some of the things that you manage to capture, they tell you something about that particular time as well. So photography has this kind of historical value in a way, particularly street photography, because you capture the world around you, and it's never going to be the same again. So that's another thing which makes it very important, and also interesting to me. I think it has a historical meaning, which you can probably only see, in a number of years. But I think that's important. And now, when we look at the photographs made in the 60s or 50s or 70s, you can tell a lot about that time by just looking at different photographs. So that's also, I think, a big task for street photography, to document our times.
Yeah, that's an important point you made there. That's not, you don't just make the images for yourself, but also for future generations, and have, yeah, so that they see what everyday life look like, and don't have just recordings of surveillance cameras or
Exactly.
stuff like that. Yes, yeah. A good example in that is yeah, the work of Vivian Maier, all the information you got from her, like when she was still alive, nobody saw her pictures, but she left this huge body of work, and just decades later, it was discovered, and yeah, there's so much value in that.
Yeah, it's a very exciting story, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and same, in a way, it's also interesting. It kind of reminded me of the story of Gary Winogrand. When he left so many undeveloped photographs when he died. There are like hundreds and thousands of rolls of film that he's never checked himself, and that forms a great part of his archive as well. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I think it's very, very interesting to see, and different approaches people take, with their photography. Like Vivian Maier, for example, didn't share much of her work with others, and Gary, as I'm sure he preferred not to look at his pictures for a long time, to get rid of any kind of memories that he had from that particular day when he shot those pictures, to kind of be as objective as possible.
Yeah. How do you handle that? Do you identify with that approach, or do you frequently look at your images?
I tried that approach for some time. Not looking at my pictures for a while, and not for years, like sometimes Gary did. But it proved to be very hard for me to do. So I tend to check my photos normally the same day I take them. Probably not while shooting. After I come home and have some rest, and then I look at all the photographs I made from that day. I might select some of them that might be worth further consideration. So I wouldn't select immediately the best ones, if any. I'll select maybe some of them that kind of are worth looking at again at some point a bit later, and then I give it a second shot where I choose the final images.
Mm. And your archive, how do you organize your pictures? Are they all digitally on your computer or some hard drive, or do you also print a lot? Do you like the physical experience of having the print in front of you?
Yeah. So what I do is I can say that my archive is probably the best organized one. So the way I organize is by year, by country, by city. Sometimes when I have a lot of pictures from a particular city, I might have some further breakdown. So I keep them on my computer. I also have a copy on an external hard drive, like a backup copy. In terms of printing, yes, I like to see my work printed. I don't print as much as I would like to. Obviously, I have some prints for some exhibitions and things like that. So I have some prints. But what I realized is that photographs really have their kind of second life when they get printed. They have their own life, I would say, even. So I was very delighted to see my works printed in a book. When they're kind of all together, they somehow interact with each other, and that's something that's not so easy to achieve online. It's not the same thing when you can physically hold them in your hands and see how they all work together or don't work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we are already talking about printing, and maybe we can focus a little bit on your book now. It's called Heavy Color. When was it published?
So the first edition was published in August, so the last summer. And then I printed some more later in autumn. Yeah, so I didn't print too many copies. So I printed limited edition. So that was very exciting for me. And I heard a lot of stories from other photographers how difficult it is to make a book, and how they struggled a lot with sequencing, with editing, etc., etc. So I was a little bit terrified in the beginning when I was starting to prepare for it. But then, the book has my works from 7 years of shooting, so it's quite a long period of time covered. Having said that, most of it comes from, I would say, starting from 2013 up to 2017. So most of it comes from the last 4 years or so. And when I started working on this sequencing and editing, I already kind of had an idea in my mind, because even though I haven't been working on the book for so long, I already had it in my head. So actually, it wasn't as painful as I thought it would be. It was actually a quite enjoyable process. I liked the editing part and the sequencing part, and it didn't take me that long to come with an edit. Actually, not as long as I expected by far. So if someone has a body of work that he or she wants to share with a wider audience, I can strongly recommend to work on a book when you kind of feel that you're ready for it. And even if you don't want to share it with other people, I think just for your own experience, it's good to organize your photographs in a particular way, in the form of a book. Even if you print just one copy for yourself, I think it helps you to understand, the strengths and the weaknesses of your project. You can see what kind of things are probably lacking, what you need to add, what you still need to work on, or what actually goes well together. So it's a very interesting and very kind of different experience from anything else you can do as a photographer, I think.
Okay, so in a way, it helped you to create a more coherent body of work, or is there any other way in which making this book helped you?
Yeah, and it helps to kind of organize your thoughts as well. Not just your picture. So you start thinking in a more structured way about your work. So that helps as well, I think.
Yeah. And how did you go about the editing process? You mentioned that you imagined it to be much more difficult than it actually was. But what was how did you go about that?
Yeah, so I have 60 photographs in my book. And when I started working on the books, I made a selection of some of the photographs that I thought would go well together, that are similar in style and approach. Because my book is not focusing on a particular topic, in terms of telling the story. It's more focuses on a particular approach and the way of seeing. So the photographs are put together, based on the style and approach rather than a particular story. So I made a bigger selection, obviously, first of all, which I think is a common approach. So I selected maybe 200 photographs as candidates, and then I kind of started narrowing down in different ways. So some photos, they didn't fit, with the rest straight away, so I could remove them. Some of the other ones, and also some of the photos that I like individually, but you kind of need to see what actually works with the rest of photographs. So I needed to remove some of the ones I actually liked, and then I need to see what worked together well, kind of on the same on sorry, I lost my thought.
No problem, no problem.
So you need to see, what kind of goes well together. So I started kind of combining the photographs together to see, what goes well in the sequence as well. And sometimes that led to some unexpected results as well. So I found some of the combinations that I think worked really well, but together those photos work well, but I wasn't originally thinking of including some of them into the book, because individually they might not be as strong as together with something else. So you get this kind of synergies sometimes, which are quite fascinating because it leads to unexpected results, which is also an interesting part of the editing. So I have some photographs which I think I have never even shown, probably, to a wider audience, but I think they worked well with the other stuff. So that was an interesting bit. Obviously, when I had my first draft, I showed it to a couple of people who I trust to get their opinion as well. So they came up with some suggestions. Then I rejected most of them, but still, some of the thoughts they shared with me, I implemented, and then I printed a dummy book for myself, to have another look at the printed version. Then again, I have seen what works best, what doesn't work that well when it's printed. Also did some further color correction on some of the photographs, because obviously, even if you do the test prints, sometimes you still need to change them a little bit to get satisfied with the final product. So there were some corrections made. Yeah, and then I just printed the book. So that was it. I guess in short,
Yeah,
in
interesting.
short, yeah, that was a very interesting process, which I enjoyed a lot actually.
And the editing, did you do the editing on the computer, or did you print all the candidates maybe in small format and had them in front of you and to shift them around?
Yeah, I know that's a quite common way of doing things, like printing some small copies and shifting them around, as you said. However, I did it online, online on my computer entirely. I had some kind of small. Yeah, it's similar to kind of having small printed versions, but I just did it on my screen. So in a way, it's similar, but just without printing them and having them on my table. It just depends, I guess. I mean, there is no right or wrong way about that. I think it just depends what kind of works for you best individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a. You said there's a second edition that you just printed. So is it still for sale?
Yes, I still have some copies, not many, but I still have some copies. They're available on my website,
Yes.
which is dmitrystepanenko.com. Quite
Okay.
easy enough. So there is a section on books, and also in that section, I show a preview. I actually have a page by page preview of the book there on YouTube. So I have a link there and the description of the project itself. So if people are interested, they can have a look and decide whether that's something that would be good for them to get, before actually getting the book. So I want to be, as transparent as possible. So I still have some copies. So if someone who's listening to the podcast is interested, you can get the book directly from the website.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful work, and I'll put the link to your website in the show notes of this episode, of course, so everybody can have a look at it and see for themselves if they like to purchase the book.
Thank you.
Definitely a great book that you published there.
Thank you very much.
Dmitry, you mentioned some of your influences and some photographers that you admire. Among them, you mentioned Gary Winogrand, for example. Let's talk about a little bit about influences and how they can help you, or looking at the work of other photographers can help to improve your own photography. Everybody has a different strategy of going about that. Some say that they don't look very much at other photographers' work because they want to develop their own way. Some others, they say it helps them, and I find that always interesting to hear different approaches when it comes to studying the work of others. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I think in my view, it is important to to study the work of great photographers, not only photographers, as I mentioned before, also other. It's important to study other types of art as well, because I believe that improves your visual literacy, right? So you get more experience, kind of as simple as that, if it's good or not, kind of thing. I mean, when something works, when something doesn't work. And when it works, you kind of try to analyze why it works, why you like a particular work of art, why you like a particular photograph, why you don't like a particular photograph. And I think that's important, not just to look at the photos, but trying to analyze, what attracts you in there. Is it a particular story? Is it good light, or is it just a play of shadows, or is it something else? It's different for different people, and something that works perfectly well for one person may not work for another one. So it's all individual, but I think it's very important to try to study photography, to spend a bit more time on the photograph that he looks at, to try to understand what's like and you don't like, and then try to implement some of the things that you learned as well. I'm not saying about copying work of others, even though some of the photographers that just start, they might copy the works of other photographers or try to copy or imitate the style. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. When you learn photography, when you're quite new, you want to try different things to see what works, what doesn't work for you. But then later on, you want to try at least to develop your own style. And then you look at the works of the photographers for inspiration rather than for copying things.
Yeah.
Also, what I learned from the works of certain masters is different depending on when I look at their works. When I just started and I look at the works of I don't know, Alex Webb, for example, I was very surprised and very impressed by the way he had all his layers and many people in the frame and stuff like that. And that kind of drove me to try something like that and see if it works for me, if it's interesting. It's not necessarily my thing, which I realized later on. But then when I look at his work again, after a couple of years, I start noticing other things, with more experience. Now I pay more attention to color, for example, his photographs, the combination of color, how it works, how he uses color. So what I'm saying is that as you grow as a photographer, and you look at the works of other great photographers, work of great photographers normally have several layers in them. So there are different things that you can learn depending on the stage of your, well, I wouldn't say career, but based on your experience as a photographer.
Mm.
So that's also important. So as for myself, I was quite heavily influenced by several color photographers. As I mentioned, Georgy Pinhasov is one of them, because I think what I like most about his work is not just his great sense of light and color, but the fact that he keeps experimenting. He never stops. All his photography keeps changing over time, and that's very exciting to see how it changes. Because for some of the masters, they kind of they produce amazing work, but they're kind of a little bit stuck in what they're doing. So stylistically, they don't develop much after a certain point when they reach some certain level. But what I enjoy a lot about his work is that he keeps experimenting. Another example of a photographer that had a big influence on me would be Harry Greer, another famous Magnum photographer from Belgium. So he has amazing color photographs, which I think probably had the strongest influence on my work, if you look at them. But what also inspired me is that in one of the interviews, I think, or probably in one of his books, he mentioned that he started shooting black and white at some point. And as I said, he was shooting in Belgium. And Belgium, probably quite similarly to UK, is not the most, I would say, colorful and vibrant country, when you look around you. And then he decided to kind of challenge himself as well. I started looking for color in Belgium. I started shooting color. So that kind of story, I think he became one of the best photographers working in color. So that was one of the stories that inspired me in the first place to kind of try to do something similar, like looking for color in UK. Obviously, not being the most typical place for strong colors. So sometimes it's not even the photography that inspires you, but it might be like some of the thoughts behind it from different people that can kind of push you forward to develop. And it's not only photographers, as I mentioned. So I really enjoy some of the films by, say, David Lynch or Wong Kar-wai, because I think that if you stop their movies at any point in time, pretty much you can take the still from the movie, and it might be like a perfect photograph as well.
Yes, you're right.
And also the mood, obviously, in the pictures, in the movies, are very, the mood is very special. And if you can produce something like that in your photographs, that normally makes an interesting photograph as well. So that's something that can inspire you, or at least like put you in the mood for, when you go out, you're inspired by these movies, and you're looking for something that you wouldn't normally look for.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
always a plus, I think.
Yeah, great thoughts on that. To just analyze in every possible way the works of other artists, as you said, and just if it resonates with you, try to find out why, and then just dig deeper and deeper till you kind of deconstruct the tools that the photographers or other artists use to produce that kind of work, and then just pick the tools and build up your own toolbox that you might use for to develop your own style then, or use them in a different way to create the kind of work that that's inside of you. That's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Dmitry, street photography is, as you said, and probably everybody who does street photography knows, it's full of surprises. You go out and you never know what's going to happen, and that's one of the beauties of this particular genre. Are there any stories or funny thing that happened to you all along or over the years that you've been shooting street, and that you can share with us now?
Well, there are a lot of kind of small stories, even though I tend to take a photo, kind of keep walking, not staying too long in the area. And I normally try to blend in with the crowd and not to draw attention. I'm more of an observer rather than necessarily an intruder. But yeah, sometimes stories happen, and one example, not really a story, but something unexpected, I would say, would be well, sometimes I travel quite a bit, right? And quite often I go somewhere with my wife now, which in some way restricts me, in my photography, because obviously, even though I have kind of the full permission to do my own thing, but still, obviously I pay attention to her when we go together, so I kind of probably miss some of the chances. But on the other hand, sometimes it leads to unexpected results as well. When in some cases my wife actually pointed me in the right direction, kind of when I didn't notice something. So it might work in a surprising way sometimes.
In both ways, yeah.
In both ways, yeah. And like once we went to Venice a couple of years ago, in winter. So it was Venice is beautiful, but I didn't succeed in making many interesting photographs there. A lot of kind of cliche shots that you can take, but you want to do something more original. So there was a long day, after a lot of walking, and it started to rain. And it was already dark outside, so I was not really expecting anything good to happen, anything interesting. Yeah, so we're standing there under some kind of like a small roof somewhere, just waiting for the rain to finish. And then, I was quite unhappy with my photography that day because I didn't shoot anything interesting. And then, so we're standing and looking at the street, and close to some kind of house. And then my wife just pointed me in completely opposite direction to the actual house that was just behind us, and there was this big glass window, and there was a very interesting guy in there kind of turning the lights off and trying to leave the place, probably go home after a long day. And then, like, she pointed me to that guy, said, like, oh, look, he looks funny and interesting. And so, like, okay, yes, but he's already he switched off the light and he was leaving. And okay, it was probably another moment wasted. So it was kind of not my day. So yeah, but then when I noticed him, he actually, it looks like he forgot something. So he returned back. He sat at his desk again. He turned on the small light on his table, which actually made the light much more interesting. And then I managed to shoot him through the window, but some light in the window, and then this kind of small light on his desk, and it actually appeared to be, I think, not a bad photograph in the end. So the lesson from this one is two lessons, I think I learned. First one is that sometimes you never happen when you never know what's going to happen. So you can't expect things. Even it doesn't matter how much experience you have. Sometimes things just happen, and you need to be ready for them. You need to kind of keep pushing and keep trying, and that would lead to some success sometimes. And second thing is, you actually kind of need to listen to your wife sometimes. And then it can actually
That's good advice.
lead to good outcomes. Yeah. So I was quite happy, about that shot at the time, at least, and obviously, my wife is very proud of herself about pointing me in that direction. So it was a good outcome. But yeah, so
good teamwork.
So even after a long day when you don't get anything and you're quite frustrated about that, still some shots can happen, and that happened more than once to me. So you shouldn't give up. And sometimes, even in the worst condition, when it's dark and it's raining and nothing is happening and no one is on the street, something can happen still, and you can get a good photograph. So that's the
exactly.
Conclusion. Yeah.
No, totally. I know that I've made the same experience. It's you should never give up, even though we've had a quite bad day maybe on the streets. But there's always, or there always might be one good shot left, and just always be ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Dmitry, you are also a member of a street photography collective, and that's something I'd like to touch on as we close this interview.
Yep.
The kind of engaging with the street photography community as a whole. What does it mean to you to connect with other photographers?
I think it's very important, and I think it enriched my experience in many ways. So there are 9 of us in the collective at the moment, and all of us come from different countries. All of us have different backgrounds. Most of us would have very different styles as well in street photography, and that's something that we did on purpose. So apart from just finding nice people with good work, we try to find people with kind of different background, different opinions that we could all share together when we discuss things, where we can discuss our photographs in the group. Sometimes we ask for advice or some tips for editing. But then it's also good to work on some collective projects. So we have finished several such projects within the collective. And a good example of a collective project can be collective exhibition. So, for example, in 2016, we had a big exhibition in Sweden for our collective. There were about 100 large-scale photographs printed in a big museum in Borås, which is close to Göteborg, which is one of the biggest museums of contemporary art in Sweden. So it's an important museum. So there was a very big exhibition with many people coming, and the press and the radio, attending. So that was I think a big success, and it's much harder to complete something like that on your own. It's easier when you are part of the collective. You are stronger in that sense. It's a little bit easier to complete some kind of these big projects. Another thing that you could do is you can work on another project, and you can publish a zine, for example. It's another way of showing your work. So in a collective, you can work on a particular topic, and because you have different photographers with different experience, different backgrounds, they would produce different work on the same topic. So they would show something from different points of view, and you can combine it all to show, to kind of talk about the same thing from different angles, which might be also interesting. It's a lot about conversation as well. So we talk a lot on a daily basis about photography, try to support each other, to share ideas, to get, to help each other with publishing work and, all this kind of stuff. So I think it's a good thing. But the best thing is that, they're all great people, and we try to meet on a more or less regular basis. And, it's always a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to ask, if it's just a virtual contact that you have via maybe Skype calls or emails, or if there's regular meetings as well among you.
Yeah, we try to meet at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, for as many people as possible. It's not always possible that all of us come.
Mm-hmm. How many members are there?
So there are 9 of us. We just added two members recently, so there were 7 of us for a while. And last year actually was the first time all 7 of us met at the same time. Before that there were sometimes 6 people, sometimes 5 people, but like for the first time we met last summer, all of us, when we met at the London Street Photography Festival, which is probably another thing that I wanted to mention in this interview, if you wish. So that's the festival that I'm one of the organizers of. So it was founded last year. So last year was the first edition of the festival, of which I am the art director. So this is a kind of a non-commercial event, with series of events that happens every August. So we'll have the second edition this August, where we try to give a platform for emerging photographers to show their work, to discuss photography, to present their projects. We organize workshops, exhibitions, photo reviews, etc., photo walks. So it's a big program that we have over a weekend, and everyone is very welcome to attend. It's free to attend as well. So we are supporting the photography community as much as we can. So the next one will be in August, as I mentioned, from 3rd to the 5th of August. So everyone's very welcome to London.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful event. Is there a website?
Yes.
Or where?
Yes, there is a website which is LSPF, so London Street Photography Festival, lspf.co.uk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we're in the process of updating our website at the moment. So you can see still a lot of parts from last year, but we'll be announcing the program for this year quite shortly as well. But the time and the venue are fixed, so people can start making their plans if they want to attend.
Yeah, great event, and I'll put the link to that as well in the show notes.
Thank you.
And the collective, it's called the Street Collective that you have. It's thestreetcollective.com, a great website displaying beautiful street photography. from all of all the 9 members, and there's one photographer from Germany,
Yes.
part of the collective, Fabian Schreier. I don't know him personally, but I've also interviewed him for my website, so I'm
Great.
familiar with his work. It's great, but all the other members, wonderful work, and it's really worth checking out what's there.
Sure, and I'm sure they will be more than happy, if you're interested, to talk to you about photography as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, yes. I'll invite some more of the members of your collective. Um, Originally, like when you first started, were you one of the founders of this collective, or how did it all start? You knew each other from Facebook groups or other street photography online internet communities, or how did that come about?
Yes, I was one of the founders. So there were several of us to start with, and Fabian was one of the co-founders as well. I think in general, Fabian is kind of the driving force behind the collective in many ways. So we all knew each other through the internet, through Facebook mostly. So we knew the works of each other. There was in the beginning there was Fabian, myself, Gabi, who is another member, Gabi Ben Abraham, and there were a couple of more people. Mats Alfredson is another member who was there from the beginning. There were a couple of more people as well who left the collective for different reasons. And then we invited some more people to join the collective over the years. Some of the invitations were based on people applying to join. So anyone is welcome to send their portfolio and the motivation for joining the collective, and then we all discuss those and we decide who to invite. But also we invited the photographers whose work we really liked, and we thought that their work could complement our work well, so it would be different and interesting to us, and also it would be someone with a different experience and different style.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful way of working together and to join forces for common projects. As you mentioned, you had an exhibition, and just to share the love for street photography. Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad I'm part of this collective as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way also to improve on your craft, just to see what others are doing and get influenced by them, get some inspiration, and maybe once when you're stuck, to get some new impulses and motivation, and it's yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very inspiring.
Yeah, great. Well, Dmitry, apart from that, are there other internet resources when it comes to street photography that you can recommend and mention here? Other sites that you like to look at?
Well, I still use Flickr,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's not as active as it used to be, but there are still some very good groups on Flickr that are interesting to follow. I can give a couple of examples. One such interesting group would be a group called Street Fight, which is organized and maintained by the Observe Collective. It's another street photography collective. When they every week they choose several pairs of images which are similar in some ways, street photography similar in some ways, and then people vote for or against a particular image and give their reasons why they think one is more interesting than another one. So it's quite interesting to actually see and read some thoughts about particular images. It kind of works as some sort of critique sometimes, which is a little bit lacking on Facebook when most people are trying just to be nice and say nice things. But it's interesting to read that. I think it's useful. Another group which I find interesting is actually the group that we maintain as a collective. It's called Street Sequence. So that one is based on the collective project we finished first. And in that group, what we do is that we have a group of images where every next image is somehow connected to the previous one. And this sequence goes on forever. And we try to find an interesting match to the previous image, and then we post it to the pool, to the Flickr pool. And we try to link the images in different ways as much as possible. So not only based on a particular thing, that appears in one of the images, and we look for exactly the same thing. So the more kind of non-obvious the connection is, but it should be strong enough, the more interesting it gets. So every week we try to find the next element in the chain, and then again post it on Flickr and also on our collective Facebook page, so that people can see how it develops into infinity.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
So I think it's quite interesting as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, there are other examples. There are other good groups of Flickr that I'm sure people are aware of as well. Yeah, so that would be one thing. Obviously, your website. I try to go there, to see some of the interviews, which is very interesting. What other websites? One-to-one clicks, another one that has some interesting interviews sometimes, which I enjoy reading. I mean, there are a number of websites. I can't say that I go to some of them on a very regular basis. It's more like when I see some interesting link, posted by someone somewhere that leads to an interest. Recommendations. Yeah, then I would normally go and check it out.
Yeah, I imagine. And within your group, I mean, your collective there, I imagine that there's also, a constant exchange of links or sources. So there's always something to discuss.
Yes, we try to discuss exactly. We try to discuss, other photographers or some other interesting projects to share, share the experience and see, how it can help us to develop as well.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks a lot, Dmitry. It was very exciting to talk with you about street photography. It was great fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for taking the time, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. Hey.
Dmitry, to close, we mentioned your website. Are there other sites on the internet that listeners can find more out about you and your work?
Sure. I have an account on Instagram, for example. It's Dmitry. I can send you the link later, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah, Flickr. I have a Facebook page as well, so there are quite a lot of links that I can provide.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very active on the different social media platforms.
Trying to.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Dmitry. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, this was my conversation with London-based street photographer Dmitry Stepanenko. If you'd like to check out the works of more talented street photography artists, please head over to artofcreativephotography.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll let you know when my new podcast show kicks off. It's going to be a show where I interview artists from around the world and pick their brains to help you become a better photographer. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and until next time. Bye-bye.